know, Senator Ayotte and I are both very concerned about where we are with the debt and deficits in this country. And she talked about the bipartisan group of 44 that's been working. We really started with the recommendations from the Simpson-Bowles Commission, the President's Deficit Reduction Commission, that address all aspects of the federal budget. And I believe we cannot solve this problem without addressing all of those areas of the federal budget. So we need to look at the domestic programs, we need to look at defense, we need to look at mandatory programs, as you point out, the entitlements, and we need to look at the revenue side, because we are not going to be able to solve the huge challenge that we face unless we're willing to consider all of those aspects of the budget. And I totally agree. I think we need to address that this year. We need to roll up our sleeves and make some tough decisions. And we need to do it in a way that recognizes we still have a fragile economy, so we need to backload some of the cuts. We've already made, last year in the debt ceiling agreement, we made $1 trillion in cuts that are already underway. The sequester requires us to make another $1.2 trillion in cuts before we get to January. Most economists that have looked at the debt and deficit say that we need to make about $4 trillion in savings in the budget if we're going to get to a place where the budget is balanced and we're just paying down on the debt, which is what most economists think we need to do. So I think it's important that we do that. I think that will not happen without people hearing from all of you and others around the country that you want to see some action taken on this, because, as I said, these are going to be tough decisions. But I think that people in the country, if they feel like what we come up with is fair and that there's going to be burden sharing on the part of everybody, that people are going to be willing to do that. But we're running out of time here before we get to a place where we're going to see across-the-board cuts in a way that I think are not going to benefit any of us.
Micah, you hit it right on. It's why I run for the United States Senate, because 60% of our spending right now is mandatory programs. It's on autopilot. Incredibly important. I mean, Medicare, Social Security, other Medicaid, other programs that are relying on. So 40% of the pie right now is discretionary spending between defense and non-defense. So one of the problems with where we were with even the reduction in the debt ceiling is we left 60% of it off the table, so that until we address preserving these entitlement programs, we can't fundamentally get the fiscal picture of this country in where it needs to be. I mean, we're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar that we spend in Washington. And if you look at those programs that some of you may be relying on, and we all will be relying on, it's Medicare, Social Security, where people have invested in. Medicare goes bankrupt in 2024. According to the independent trustees, not Republicans, not Democrats, they're just focused on looking at the actuarial soundness of it. Social Security is 2036. So we continue kicking this can down the road. What I would ask all of you is, there's a lot of political demagoguing every time there's someone who comes forward to put together a plan to reform, whether it's Medicare or Social Security. And yes, we have to make some hard choices on everything, there's no question. But I'm hopeful that rather than having convenient talking points about it, we need to be honest with people about where these programs are, because to make no changes is the way to end the programs, or to fundamentally, drastically cut benefits for people who are relying on the programs and don't have other sources, whether it's their health care or other sources for their retirement income. And it's something that I think is also important, that we get back to the regular budgeting order in the Senate, because if you aren't constantly looking at the 10-year plan and really doing the budgeting each year in the way it was intended. That's how you get where we are with the $15 trillion of debt. So I'm hoping that we make these choices before other people make them for us, because where we are right now, our interest rates are historically low. So not only with the debt that we have, when we borrow it, we have to pay interest just like anyone else. And with the interest rates historically low right now, our debt service is very low. But as we're both hopeful that our economy kicks up and things go better, we will pay easily 1 to 2%. One is a very mild increase in interest, 2%. So for every 1% increase in interest, Doug Elmendorf told the Budget Committee it's $1 trillion more in debt that we owe over the next 10 years. So this is something we can't continue to kick down the road, because eventually the service on our debt will eat up the choices of what we want to spend on education, eat up the choices about what we want to spend on our national defense and so forth, or our transportation infrastructure. So I am committed to working with anyone to make sure that we address this, because I think this is the big challenge of our time. And if we don't get that right, then all of the other issues that we talked about here today, we will not be able to do what we think is right for New Hampshire or the country.
We have about 3 minutes left. One final question before giving you a quick chance to